I'd love to start off actually with Anna to my right. And Anna, I think from your point of view, for me, the first question really is to find out, why does digital financial inclusion matter?
Thank you, Audrey. Great to be here. At Women's World Banking, we strongly believe that digital financial services have the potential to be a silver bullet for closing the gender gap in financial inclusion. So why is that? It can address a number of barriers, of key barriers that women face in accessing financial services. Many of those barriers have been mentioned. Time and mobility constraints, security, confidentiality. So why digital financial services have not reached a large number of women to date? We see there are three main reasons to that. Again, a few of them have been mentioned or alluded to in the discussions in the panels before ours, but I think it's worth repeating them. So reason number one, slower adoption curves. We know that research shows that women tend to adapt to new financial services and to new technologies more slowly than men. Due to, again, mobility constraints, lower literacy rates, and irregular sources of income. Reason number two, lack of IDs and formal documentation, of course, that prevents them from not only opening bank accounts, but also often getting SIM registration. And reason number three, and I think it was discussed in the last panel, is the lack of products that have women in mind, that were designed with women in mind. We know that innovation in the digital finance space has been driven mostly by MNOs and have been very much focused on payments. While we know that savings is the key, is the most frequent financial transaction used by poor people, and it's the most important need for women. We don't see many savings products around. So at Women's World Banking, for the last couple of years, we've been focusing on designing a number of digital financial products, mostly focused on savings. I'll be very happy to share some of the examples of those products that we believe provide practical solutions and address these important barriers.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Now, Liz, I'm going to take you in a different angle and really bring you back home to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. One of the focus areas there has been really around making the ecosystem, I love that word that you have mentioned to me before, the ecosystem for digital financial services work. Now, we heard earlier insights from Unilever and Pfizer around partnerships working and the ecosystem that they work in. What is the digital financial ecosystem and why is that important?
It's a good question, Audrey, and thank you. It's really an honor to be here today, especially with our close partners, Women's World Banking. The ecosystem, I think, is a really important thing to keep in mind as we think about how we're going to reach and financially include women. So I want to go back to sort of the principles of what we believe on the financial services for the poor team. First is that financial services very much matter to poor people. And can help people get out of poverty and stay out of poverty. The solution, however, to include people is digitally. Without a digital solution, we just won't reach the scale and reach the 2 billion who continue to be unbanked, 1.1 billion of whom are women. And lastly, it is critical that we do focus on women. As we have heard, the evidence shows that women can be accelerators to actually improve household outcomes for the very poor. So those three things together really point to the importance of keeping this ecosystem in mind as we include women. And what is that ecosystem? Well, first of all, it's making sure we have the rails in place to be able to offer digital products. The rails, the rules, and the regulations. And as soon as we do that, however, you need to start thinking about the different players that could be using this ecosystem. So both on the supply and the demand side, if you think about, we on the financial services team, we follow, in the ecosystem, we're following the government players, we're following what the private sector is doing, we're following what the public sector is doing, And there's some really, really exciting things going on that are...
We're excited you to give us examples of technology that's emerging in this ecosystem.
So,
it's really about digital technology. What is
well,
that
I
technology?
think the thing I would point to the most are digital payment connections between a government and its citizens. That's actually one of the things that's happening very rapidly in India, and I would encourage you all to watch this space. Prime Minister Modi and his government are very serious about not so much financial inclusion, but about digitally connecting their citizens. And they're going to do it in a number of ways. First, they're going to open up accounts for everybody that are linked to their IDs. And I understand we're going to come back and talk about IDs, which is super important. And they're also going to talk about changing some of the ways they deal with subsidies in energy and food, and think instead about paying them directly to the citizens of India. So they are going to be, but they still have challenges in India. So in this ecosystem that's very much geared towards this digital payment connection, women still have some trouble getting IDs. They're still having trouble getting social payments from the government because they have barriers that men don't face in terms of getting IDs and getting accounts. And so there's still work to be done.
Thanks, Liz. Now, Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot because you're in a world that creates technology, not just for the poor, but technology that creates access in financial services, simplifies processes, and creates money. So what opportunities do you see in financial, including women digitally? And when I talk about opportunities, where are the opportunities to make money? So let's talk about your business and how we can learn from that and empower women, include women, and make money.
Well, I haven't quite figured out the technology that makes money, but if I invent that, I'll let you know. But we have invented a platform that allows banks to provide financial services to women-owned SMEs in a manner that they're not doing today, in a manner that's profitable and sustainable. More specifically, roll it back a bit, MP Credit Technologies, we focus on unsecured, underbanked small business customers, both in developed and developing economies. The clients of ours are the banks that are underserving them but wish to serve them. And the product offering is a loan origination and portfolio management system where the core driver is what I call electronically verifiable cash flow. That is to say, the banks that are raising their hand are sitting on a trove of information. And I don't like to use the word data. Absolutely, they're sitting on a trove of data. The data, of course, is electronic information. The important thing about this information is that it's information that we would use in traditional underwriting, character capacity assessments, relative to providing credit to any small business. And I have to say that AMP is founded, obviously to produce profit for its shareholders. Financial inclusion has been an essential element from the beginning, but it has only been, say, in the last 2 years that we really came to focus our financial inclusions on women-owned businesses because of what we saw as a clear overlap between the problems of women-owned businesses having, generally going to businesses where they're not having collateral as a component of their business, but generally service-oriented businesses, retail sector, the same type of businesses that if you were to take any traditional bank SME loan department and say, right, I'm a bank, here are my SME loan products, but I don't lend to businesses that don't have collateral. I don't lend to businesses that have not been around for 3+ years, that don't have great financial statements, that don't have directors who are prepared to do joint liability, and by the way, you have good credit scores and that. Once you break down those pieces, you start to recognize the mapping against some of the same issues that have been identified, say, by Experian, even in the US market, in a recent research report that they put out. So we're all about enabling banks to provide a product set into their SME base. And what we've discovered is that women-owned businesses can particularly benefit from this. And so we're looking to work in that regard.
So basically you're saying you use data and algorithms to understand the women. We've had a lot of research lately that says get to know your customer and get to know the women, but you're developing products and taking that information and then translating that back to the banks and enabling.
That's correct. I mean, again, I don't like the word data because people speak about that and they think of it as magic pixie dust as something they can't do. It's information, right, in electronic form that we can process. And once it's information, okay, what information matters? Does it matter how many people like you on Facebook? Maybe. Does it matter how many transactions have gone through the bank account in terms of cash deposits? What about payments out? Now suddenly I have the methodology of doing capacity to service a loan, What about character indicators? Are you below your balance every day? Are you overdrawn? Are you bouncing checks? So it's information that we as bankers have historically looked at. But because it is now in digital format, and because I like to think we do some clever stuff behind the scenes as well, we can actually enable banks to service these customers in a much more efficient way. So really what this digital innovation brings is a better access to information, which is more efficiently processed. The distribution is much more robust, particularly when such things as a mobile phone now suddenly creates a digital footprint upon which we can start to do our analyses.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. Now, Louise, what's the Mastercard story? Because you're sitting there for Mastercard, but actually what you're really doing that's fascinating is finding ways of creating an economic impact and sustainability using technology. Tell us more, because I know Mastercard from the card that I use for paying, but there's more to it, and I think you need to share what that has been, the success and the journey, including women using Mastercard technology.
Okay, all right, delighted to, and good afternoon everybody, very pleased to be part of this. And I've been asked a couple of times, am I from the Mastercard Foundation? Sometimes I wish I was, but I'm not, on the business side. I know the Mastercard Foundation's got a lot of credibility. So, Mastercard, we don't issue cards, we don't set APIs, we don't set card fees. We're the network, the processing organisation that sits behind, and it sounds a bit show-offy, but we sit behind 22,000 licensed financial institutions, connecting 37 million merchants, and we do that off a huge system that transfers data and transfers transactions very, very quickly. So we are a commercial organisation, and we floated 10 years ago, hence the foundation was set up, which has 10% of our share value put into it to invest directly and indirectly through organisations that are represented today, but to support financial literacy and individual kind of educational and employment opportunities and tackling financial inclusion. But as an organisation, I think Deborah coined it this afternoon when she said, or this morning, when she said, you've got to be doing good by doing well. And that's a mantra which is now well entrenched throughout the Mastercard organisation. So probably some of you know that I think a couple of years ago we committed to onboard 500 million new consumers, so those financially excluded, into transactional banking. A number of other organisations did that as well. We've got 350 million to go, so we've directly worked with organisations, financial institutions, NGOs, IGOs, governments to onboard 150 million. And we do that through, and it's been mentioned a number of times throughout today, but it's all about the partnership and the collaboration and the operating models. So we're a B2B organisation, but we're here to help, to support organisations coming together to embed and develop solutions which are going to onboard individuals. And financial technology is a core of that. So we can directly help organisations. We also are looking to hothouse new solutions for financial inclusion through a newly launched financial inclusion lab, which is based in Africa in Nairobi, with great support from the Gates Foundation. So yeah, we work globally with a number of organisations, and within my region, Europe, I've got it into my own personal goals that I need to onboard an additional 50 million consumers by 2018. So please let me help you, because I'm also kind of committed into this, and it comes from the top down. And I think somebody else mentioned this morning about the importance of the internal stakeholder. And we found that fundamental. Within our CEO down, we've got some individuals who live, breathe, believe, but also recognise the commercial opportunity of delivering solutions into markets. And once you've got those people within organisations, and you can find those people within other organisations, we do find the collaboration and the partnership works a lot better.
Thank you. And I think you summed it up quite well. Please let us help you. And I'm going to throw it back to you now. So this is not in the script, so I'm breaking the script. Thanks, Karen. And I'm going to ask any one of you, in fact, two of you, if you've got a burning question around wanting any one of my panelists here to help you with, whether from the bank or the NGO, please raise your hand and ask now. You've got your chance. Just two questions. I'll take one and a second one. You can still send anonymously your questions, so please ask them. So they're here to help you. That's the beauty of this panel. They've got the solutions and they can partner with you.
Well, that's great, because I have a... Thank you so much. We're a microfinance institution in Jordan, and we have 120,000 clients, and we have a dilemma, because now there is a movement to mobile banking. It's not really a dilemma, but I'd like to hear your feedback. So there is a mobile platform coming that is going to be owned by major banks and the mobile company. And we know that mobile is going to happen, and it's going to help everybody. The question is, how do you see our role as a microfinance institution? And we did discuss before the question of who owns the client. But in our case, are we simply, so if we brought 120,000 clients quickly onto the platform, so that they are all digitally connected, 5 years from now, what is our relationship with our clients? And I think we, for example, can't offer savings. We're limited in the amount of things that we can do. Are we just speeding up access of banks to our clients? Or how are we actually going to be interacting with them?
Brilliant, thank you. So who's going to be bold? Okay. If you've got one more question, I'll take it and I'll get them to answer. But wow, thank you for being bold. One more, there's one more. Yay.
Yes, hello. Wolfgang Büker from GIZ. I think we are all very happy and convinced that the digital movement is pushing the whole agenda of financial inclusion forward. And I think it's excellent to learn more how it will work. One issue I'm missing a bit, to be honest. You are as financial institutions and organizations, you are collecting a lot of data of the clients, of the women we are talking about here. And the issue I would like to raise from a regulatory side, how do we protect this data we are collecting, day in, day out? It's a big debate in Europe. It's a big debate in Germany. So banks are collecting data, and you, Thomas, just mentioned you do it too, and you make something good out of this. You use it to improve products. But in those countries we are working in, is this data well protected? Is it not being abused? If someone is earmarked as being a bad loan taker or a bad, let's say, bad risk for a financial institution, be it bank or MFI, if you are earmarked like this, is this going to become a public good everybody knows at the end of the day? I think we see all the potentials, but we have the chance now, before we implement all these new, very innovative solutions, to not forget this issue of data privacy, big data, protection, and let's make sure that we create a good framework, that we are not sitting here in 5 years' time saying, oh, what happened and what did we do to all these clients, women that might...
Thank you.
So
got it. Data integrity, critical.
Also
Thank
question.
you. Who's going to be bold enough? First to answer the microfinance, I think.
I can comment on that quickly.
Okay.
Of course, Muna Proba
So
doesn't
Anna,
want to
then
hear
Louise,
from you.
you'll talk about
I'll do the data.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So Anna?
Take them both.
I'll just quickly comment to Muna, kind of using a comment that I think also Deborah made. She had so many quotable comments saying, kind of basically leveraging different capacity of different players in the ecosystem. I think you really have a capacity to provide small micro loans to a particular segment of clients that other players in the ecosystem, the banks, don't really have. Their operating models are not set up like that. So I think you'll continue kind of leveraging on that strength while providing broader options to your clients by bringing them into this kind of broader digital payment space. So I think it's going to be
So you're
win-win.
offering to practically partner and sit down with her and find a solution?
I've
Because it's
partnered
about
with them for the last 12 years.
Brilliant. Liz, any thoughts on that as well?
You know, I think the question's a really good one. I think I love that Anna is painting a picture that sounds very clear and obvious. My perception, however, is that we don't actually know. I think the roles of some of the players are going to change in the digital world. We're already seeing the disruptors of the disruptors now that are, I mean, my colleague Claire from Vodafone, there you are sitting in the back, they used to be the disruptors. They are no longer the disruptors. And we're now seeing companies, digital media companies and others coming out of China, running really interesting new kinds of platforms that people are adopting. Follow the WeChat space, super interesting one. So I think what that means is that you guys are going to have to evolve in the new space and think about what your unique value proposition is to that group of clients. But it's a great question.
Tom, you've got to answer that because you're the disruptor today.
I'm trying to help banks to address that. So actually, unfortunately, the answer to your question, not necessarily within the context of the Jordan market, although I reckon it probably be true as well, is that technology allows banks to service the bottom of their pyramid tends to meet where the top of the MFI NGO pyramid is. And I view it as, frankly, and no disrespect in any way, but I view it as a success story. And I can speak to case studies, businesses that I know personally, especially when we were a smaller company and I was more involved, from the Philippines, for example, where we've had businesses who may not have borrowed from MFIs, but certainly, within the shadows of the major banks in the Philippines, in Manila, were historically borrowing from informal money lenders who serviced them very well, convenient, etc. And we brought them onto a banking environment by saying, within 6 months' time with the bank, you will have established enough transaction capability that we can then do character capacity assessment. Now, the virtue of getting you onto the banking grid is an element of capacity because of the increasing amount of AML and KYC that people have to go through. So bringing people further into the formal financial sector is absolutely going to happen as an element of this. Is that good or bad for your business? I'd like to think hopefully it's better for your business, especially if you buy my product before they do.
There you go. I told you the answers are here. You can buy his product.
But I mean, people that 7 years ago we started this business, 2009, and since that time there have been a lot of internet companies that have come out and said, we're going to disintermediate banks, we're going to make them disappear, we're going to raise buckets of cash, and we're going to go public. And we've seen that. From the beginning, it's often been a lonely voice. I've said, actually, banks are going to come around to this. Banks, when they see that this is big enough, sustainable enough, scalable enough, they're going to say, where do I get this technology? And that's where we came in by basically taking the long play of saying banks will do this. It's only been the last 6 months. So somewhere in the course of 2015, banks are starting to say, right, okay, we know we need to be in the sector of unsecured SME lending. We know we can't build it ourselves because every bank here will have done, well, I'm going to build it myself, I need to own it. And now they're saying, actually, where do I get this? So in the last 12 weeks, after 7 years of emptiness, in the last 12 weeks, we had 3 different banks approach us in very diverse markets. So I'm afraid that's, I'd be happy to take the gentleman's question about the data as well when we come around to that.
Can I just kind of add maybe to that question? We've talked about segmentation all morning, and I think it's important to recognize who and what type of clients this organization is serving. 120,000 not SMEs,
Yep.
home-based women with irregular income. So I mean, it's I think a topic for a different panel, but kind of challenge you back. I mean, do you see banks ever serving that segment with anything other than consumer lending?
But it's a good point because I want to, and we'll come back to that, Anna, because and this is where the sub-segments will be critical in what you talk about. But Louise, before we lose the point, we had a plea for data integrity around how you manage it. Now, if you think about Mastercard, data, I know you hate data. And the plea is, how are you going to make sure that as we continue to evolve and build products that are relevant, how do we actually manage to keep that data integrity?
Data integrity is one of the most important reputational kind of goals or kind of like bread and butter really. If you can't maintain, secure, manage your data in a regulated and appropriate fashion, then reputationally you're going to have an impact in the market. So data integrity is something that we take incredibly seriously. Within various markets and various geographies, there are different rules about whether you can export data, what you can do with it in that market. But if we're looking to use data to support innovation and support product development and kind of procure insights which are available for development communities or for other organisations, then it's anonymised, it's washed, it's cleaned, and we have very strong rules within certainly our organisation that there has to be a certain minimum threshold of data and organisations into a data mix before we will ever use that, whether it be in a private or a public space. So, data is integral to our organisation, it's integral to our reputation, and it's integral to the future of organisations. So I think we need to protect it and look after it very carefully.
Actually, your whole business is about data. Your entire business is data.
A lot of our innovations and insights and ability to work with Gates, ability to work with World Banking, ability to work with other organisations is based on the data that we have. But it's not about patterns, behaviours, insights, projections. I mean, data enables us to secure all of anyone who uses the Mastercard network. It's the data and the predictive data that enables us to increasingly secure the network and challenge kind of hackers and challenge some of these kind of implications and breaches that we have. So data is fundamental to the running of the system, but it needs to be. It's not for sale, it's not for, it's to be used to evolve the organisation, evolve the product offerings and secure the network.
Yeah, not for sale, will be stored safely. Tom?
Yeah, so I want to just ask, certainly the gentleman specifically asked me what I do with our data and how we do it. I'm going to flip that on its head, sir, because fear of the data police and the reputational impact of a front page article on Wall Street Journal or New York Times for somebody mishandling data prevents a significant amount of entrepreneurial endeavor by banks, for example. Now, I'll just knock it on its head straight away about us. Obviously, we work with banks, so obviously making sure that banks are very comfortable with that is important. And I'm an attorney, so everything our company has done is fully compliant. But what we care about is informed consent. Right? Data subjects should have the right to know who is holding their information. And let's talk about information, because I think it brings back to easier. Because with all forms of data out there, what type of information are we speaking about? Well, I'd like to know, and I think under OECD rules, I have the right to know who is holding my information, what information are they holding, and for what purpose is it going to be used. I suppose there's questions of, can I force that data holder to excise certain information? But the more we go down that road, and that's an active debate amongst regulators today around the world, the more you go down the road of, well, is it all open information to which you have, as the data subject, transparent right to review and to opt out of specific usage? The more you have, as a data subject, the ability to pick and choose what information gets posted about you, the less reliable those of us who wish to use it for purposes which are beneficial to you as a data subject. So it is a very tricky subject.
Chicken and egg situation. Thanks, Tom.
Can I add just one quick point on that, and that is that I would say that data protection and integrity is one thing, but one area that I fear we have underinvested in, and I would encourage us all to be working a little bit harder towards, is in consumer protection. Are there consumer protections in place for the poor woman in Rwanda, just like they are for the rich woman of a rich world country? I would say no. So I think that's an area we have to work.
And I think, Liz, that's actually a good point, because now I'm going to change the subject, taking back to the data, because we're now talking about digital enabling women financial inclusion. And one of the realities is that the majority of women are actually completely invisible in the financial space. Talk to us more about the whole identification process, because on one hand, you're talking about data, on the other hand, the lack of data makes it difficult for us to include women, and the technology is available today. So give us an insight on that.
Well, I think ID, I know Louise has a lot to say on ID as well. It's a huge issue. Yeah. And one of the things that's come to my attention recently is that the World Bank put out a report recently, Women, Business, and the Law, and they detailed around the world where there are different types of laws that treat men and women differently, that prevent them from owning businesses or getting national IDs. And the numbers actually staggered me, of the number of countries that have different kinds of laws for men and women who have to get national IDs. So ID is a critical issue in order to be able to be uniquely identified in the financial world. And we're still back behind the starting point for women if in 17 countries of the world there are still regulations that allow a married man to get an ID differently, or that'll make a woman have to go get permission to get an ID from her husband.
But more than that, to create access or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So talk to me more specifically around access to financial inclusion, because ID in itself, we're talking about technology and digital technology, but the ability to identify its citizens. If we look at India as an example, I think it's the first time they've rolled it out in the last year, less than 2 years. So even the ability to identify you in itself is technology that's enabling women to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think technology could be and it's been shown to be and will continue to be a fundamental driver of a legal identity. And is it fair to say that there are more people without a legal identity than there are financially excluded? So that's a shocking statistic globally. Is it reasonable I read? Yeah. So extraordinary. So we fundamentally believe a digital identity and a legal identity is fundamentally linked to the ability to enter the transactional banking and to be financially included. It's fundamental, and there are some real disparities market by market about legally and with precedent how women have not been able to secure a legal identity and the implications. We've all talked about the implications of women who've been financially excluded, so I'm not going to go into that. But fintech is a real kind of solution provider for this. And talk to you about South Africa. Most probably many of you know about the SASSA program in South Africa. It's a biometric program, but also a central government welfare disbursement program, which has combined, I think, 7 different welfare programs onto one. And it includes biometric technology, which is coming from a smaller technology organisation and a smaller South African bank. So
it's a way of pension payouts using technology.
Yeah. And a number of different, I think, kind of payments out. And by far the significant proportion of recipients are women, which is great. And what this has enabled them to have is a national ID, kind of, a biometric solution, which enables them to demonstrate and prove that the right payment's going to the right recipient. And this is again where fintech can really solve problems. And the problem that was in South Africa was that it needed to be a solution which was available to be offline because of connectivity challenges. It needed to be a solution which took into account not only a biometric identification but also proof of life. Because sometimes there are elements of biometric identification which are not actually attached to a living body. So that was a challenge that needs to be overcome. So it checks the proof of life and it checks the individual recipient and it provides this identity to individuals.
But if I look at that, that's an example of what we're talking about. So you're talking about creating accessibility using technology. So the South African example is one extreme, which says, actually in partnership, knowing a bit about that, and I think we've got somebody from the Banking Association in South Africa here, but that was a partnership of back to the ecosystem of the banks and government and the regulators finding the problem. And that's a positive example of where technology is used to create access. The negative example, and I think this is where the barriers, when you talk about barriers, is where women cannot be identified. So you can't open a bank account. And I know one of you, if I recall, Liz, was doing quite a bit of work around that. So a lot of the work in creating products or making sure that identification process works. That's on the extreme end. On the one other end, we've got the payments processes, and then we've got the work that you're doing. Can we, or are there products that can make money and the low end of the market? Can we make money? Can we build products that help us make money? I saw more hands out here from the banks, and if I'm sitting from the banks, I can either be sitting thinking about it as, okay, it's another talk shop around technology, but so what? If I look at the high end, the sub-segments at the top, you're making money. So can we create technology that creates commercial value at the low end of the market? Anna, I'll start with you.
Sure. Of course, it's beyond technology, and I think, again, it's been discussed, technology is just one piece of it, and that has been probably mostly figured out, but the rest is the product design, the marketing, consumer education, and really your operating and distribution model, as well as all the change management processes that have to take place internally and externally. Right? So I'll give you an example of Nigeria where we are fortunate to have a tiered KYC system which allows to open simple tier 1 accounts with about $100 per transaction, limit of $100 per one transaction, and about $1,200 limit on the balance that you can maintain on a tier 1 account. So many of you met Aisha Ahmad, the head of retail at Diamond Bank. We partnered with them to develop a better proposition which mimicked a lot of practices that we saw in the informal sector. So again, in the previous panel, somebody mentioned what can we learn from the informal sector. So what we saw in Nigeria, there was a system used in Nigeria, West Africa, called a system of Susu collection. So a system of informal collectors that go around the markets, big markets, every day and collect money. And collect, and whatever change you have, you pass it on, you collect, you can borrow against your balances, but this is the way market traders save in Nigeria. So we replicated that system by creating a better proposition that by employing a sales force of better friends, those collectors that go around every day, open accounts using mobile technology, so it's solving that issue of mobility. And Aisha or Mary Ellen, I think, mentioned that in some cases the bank branches are right there, but it doesn't mean that the woman can leave her stall even for 15 minutes to go to one of those branches, go through all the metal detectors, and stand in line to make a transaction. So even the branch is right there, she doesn't have the time or nobody to leave her business to. So it's bringing bringing the banking right to her doorstep, and also allowing deposits and withdrawals to be done right there in the field. They also, so that's kind of addressing the delivery model in terms of kind of raising the awareness. Those better friends also do those better talks where they talk about the importance of savings, but also helping women that often need assistance how to operate with technology to really learn about that.
So you're saying you can
money.
So you can make money, but part of the critical point is understanding the product you're developing and for who.
Scale. I would also say scale.
Practice
You have to have scale.
Yeah, so we have about almost 250,000 clients on that platform. Those wonderful better friends, about 70% of the total operating cost of that proposition. So we had to figure out.
So it's working and it's making money and it's working.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I just want to just move out and see whether we've got any questions that have been sent through. Brilliant. Okay. Lots of questions, no questions. So you've got them excited. In the last 5 minutes or so, I'd like to go around and talk about the profitability. If you could leave the audience, bearing in mind we had lots of banks here, so we're looking for solutions around technology. What would be the one or two things you want to leave behind with the audience of what they can do today to shift the mindset around the impact of technology in financial inclusion?
No, you don't have to keep to two.
No, one could be one.
Okay. So no, it's probably about 5.
You're here to help them. What can
Yeah,
they do differently?
we are here to help. So if there are organisations in the room who are looking at developing fintech-based financial inclusion solutions for women, let's have a conversation. My second point I'd like to leave with is some of the biggest scale solutions that I've seen work successfully in markets across the world have been where the government has engaged in switching a cash welfare disbursement program onto an electronic disbursement program. Even better if it's linked with EID. That's when the economic model becomes a lot more sustainable because the government becomes an economic stakeholder into that solution set. And governments save millions of pounds, sometimes tens and hundreds of millions of pounds, when they switch welfare disbursements from cash onto electronic. So that needs to be built into a broader business case. The other stakeholder, last point we'd like to consider, is the economy. So we talked about how women are socially but also financially advantaged when they become financially included. The economies in which they work also see a net positive impact. And I think there have been a few studies which I'm happy to share, but the one that immediately comes to mind is one from Moody's, which identified a $1 trillion impact over 4 years across the global economy following introduction of electronic payments. So I sometimes find it challenging that the providers, that the fintech organisations carry all the cost, because I think there is material benefit which is felt by other organisations within the broader ecosystem. Bringing them into play helps balance that cost-benefit model.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Everything, obviously so much of the comments depend upon where in the ecosystem we're falling, but for our ecosystem, I suppose the advice that I would suggest is what technologies are out there that allow banks, in particular, to expand their existing ecosystems. I mean, so you already got product approvals, you know it works, you know how the systems work. How do you expand your capabilities by utilizing technologies which allow you to now do SME credit in a manner you didn't do before? To speak a little bit about the Mastercard world of things, because merchant payments is an essential element. There's 50 million cards you need to bring on, but we talk about ecosystems. You also need to bring on, I think Mr. Vanga's opinion is 4.5 million points of acceptance, and you need banks to do that. The digital ID programs, by bringing the costs of the KYC and AML down, allow banks to expand. So thinking existing products that expand in access.
Can I just jump out? Not just banks, retailers, merchants, post offices, micro merchants, the whole ecosystem is part of this.
Brilliant.
Tom just stole what I was going to say.
Sorry.
So, it's a really good point, though. I was going to say, banks, think about rethinking your role and getting out to people more. Just getting rid of the sort of bricks and mortar mentality that I think a lot of us have, and figuring out how to partner with others who do have interesting technology and product that can get you to your customers. It's about scale, it's about acquiring customers who are going to use frequently, and it's about reaching beyond the usual borders of where you've operated before.
Brilliant.
I mean, just a few points. Take time to understand your women client base. Customer research is not optional. Start with a business case informed by in-depth customer research, and be prepared to be patient, because that profitability I've talked about is not going to come year one or maybe even year two. So there's a good trajectory, but be patient.
Okay. Brilliant. I think I've got a few minutes and I've got a surprise last question I didn't prepare you guys with. Is digital technology the silver bullet? Will it solve? We've had everything from the barriers to the challenges. If I'm sitting here as a bank, as an NGO, we need to get the answer. The conversations we've had are more than enough. Is technology the silver bullet?
Our world's going increasingly online. We're increasingly using mobile connected devices. I don't think it is the silver bullet, but if I was going to put £100 investment on it, I probably would be a reasonably safe bet. But it's people who can work with it and customize it and segment with it and bring it out into a decent solution which supports particular challenges and addresses particular needs in key markets. Anna?
You know, I completely agree here. It's really how institutions use technology, kind of leveraging it toward their kind of end goal. If they want to serve as many women in their markets, technology could be a very important enabler, but it really has to fit with their strategic objectives.
I prefer the word enabler to silver bullet. Silver bullet always makes me a little bit nervous, but I think it's a huge enabler to reach the numbers we'd like to reach.
Just being controversial, where's the answer? Silver bullet? Yes or no?
I'm supposed to say yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Look, silver bullet implies a sudden, immediate answer, and I think Anna's point was very, very well taken. Also, I'd almost challenge the notion of digital technology as if it's a sudden phenomenon. This has been going on. I think most of the people in this room are of the age of e-commerce 101, where a lot of the same topics are being debated. Sir, what do you do about data? Brilliant point. We're still debating it 20 years on. I think you need to take step by step, expand as we can, but don't feel taken aback because you're not doing something bold and hugely innovative. We can have massive effects on a global basis if we all take incremental steps forward, doing what is not seemingly all that innovative and yet is not being done before.
Now, I want to thank you all. The reason I pushed on the silver bullet is mainly because if, all of you are sitting with the solutions. If I look at the Women's World Banking, and thanks for having us here, and Anna sitting here, you have enough information. We talked about the data. But within that information are the partnerships around creating that access. Because at the end of the day, it's a simple product, it's accessibility. Are we bringing it to the women with dignity? And is it the solution that they're looking for? If I look at the Bill and Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, Liz, you partner with a lot of organizations here. I mean, I was privileged in my previous life to build a savings product with yourselves. Technology was a key enabler. Tom, you talked about, picking up where the banks have left off. You're sitting with information that allows them to develop products that will work. And finally, Louise, with Mastercard, the biometrics technology you're talking about with the data that you have has the answers. So I think for me the message in summary is to say, in everything, in all the data we're looking at, the technological component will save costs, will come effectively. It's one of the bricks and mortar. The branches are not dead, but branches are expensive. It will create access, it will create dignity, and we can take it. I mean, we talked about Deborah's grandmother, being able to use the phone, use the technology that they have. With dignity, we can access the women, we can find them where they are in the farms, we can find them at home, and using technology, we can make them participate in the financial sector and make money. Thank you.